Assalamu alaikum. In this video, we will discuss about the antibody-dependent cellular cytotoxicity. So, how cell can be lyse and how cell can be opsonize. Also referred to as antibody-dependent cell-mediated cytotoxicity is a mechanism of cell-mediated immune defense whereby an effector cell of the immune system actively lyses a target cell whose membrane surface antigen have been bound by specific antibodies. Remember that things. So let's begin to understand the whole mechanism. Basically, is a normal cell and normal antigen. Basically, the foreign antigen is not any problem, but the auto antigen will give the inflammatory mediators and immune response will lead to cause problem. This is the antigen as a bacteria, virus, and pollen. This is the autoantigen on the surface of the cell, like plasma membrane, DNA, and the DNA antigen, as well as other things. But the itself, the infected cell will represent the antigen through to the dendritic cell through toll-like receptor via a MSC molecule. But the autoantigen also recognized by this function. But this is a normal mechanism we are understanding now. The MSC class 1 molecule, which that will recognize to the naive T cell to proliferate the CD4 helper cell and the CD8, the cytotoxic T cell. CD4 also recognized through a MSC class molecule, major histocompatible molecule, will lead to proliferate, and in this way, basically, it will recruit the CD8, but it will also stimulate the naive B cell to produce plasma cell and B memory cell. Plasma cell at the quick time certain production of the immunoglobulin, this IgG antibodies will lead to opsonize the cell, which that is the infected cell. But the autoantigen against the autoantigen, the IgG antibodies will produce our own antigen. In this way, the T regulatory cell will not work correct, and in this way, the chronic inflammation will lead to cause autoimmune disorder, like the melanin containing a cell is known as the melanocyte are present on the skin, which that is responsible for the production of melanin, containing vesicle for tanning and protection against the sunlight protection, and in this way for the protection of the sunlight. So in this way, the antigen antibody complex is formation due to the inflammatory mediator. The inflammatory cytokines will produce from the melanocyte due to the UVB radiation and a lot of problems, the skin problems. In this way, will lead to produce the inflammatory cytokines, will recruit the complement system, natural killer cell, eosinophil and basophil as well as neutrophil. This also basically will opsonize, and in this way the antibody and natural killer cells interact to each other via a opsonized cell will lead to rupture this cell. Here I am drawing, explaining that sometime autoantigen interact with antibody with own antigen is known as the autoantibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity is known as the autoimmune disorder. So it is known as the autoantibody dependent cellular toxicity. So in this way, the basically the autoimmune disorder like vitiligo. Remember that things. So this is the antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity, but auto antibody dependent basically is the auto antibody dependent cellular toxicity is the problem. This is the UVB radiation and phenol, monobenzone, and catechol is important for the problem of the vitiligo, the leukoderma, via a cytotoxicity of the melanocyte. Let's begin to understand the summarization. The antibodies bind antigen on the surface of target cell. In this way, the surface of the target cell IgG. Natural killer cell CD60 and CD60 Fc receptor, which they recognize cell-bound antibodies. The cell-bound antibodies will complex in this way, formation of these remember about that. In this way, you can understand here is easy to understand. This is, and after this, antibodies will collapse to each other. And the cross linking of the CD60 triggers degranulation into a lytic synapse. This lytic synapse will lead to degranulation of the natural killer cell. After the degradation of the natural killer cell, basically however the macrophage, neutrophil, eosinophil can also mediate the antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity, but such as parasitic worms. So basically tumor cell die by apoptosis by this. So the tumor cell death due to the natural killer cell is important for normal function. But remember the auto antigen against the auto antigen, our own auto antigen, the immune response will lead to cause autoimmune disorder, while the auto antibody dependent cellular cytotoxicity